So, with Viktor Orban losing his, well, friends in Poland now, he's very, very isolated in Europe. We've even seen him try to sort of cozy up to the Austrians to try and get them on side. But Austria and their president has turned around and gone, sorry, you're a bit, politically toxic at the moment. We're not that interested at the moment. Not only that, even at home, the war in Ukraine has sort of seems to have sparked something in the population in Hungary to go, is Orban actually good? You know? So maybe, fingers crossed, um, he might be out. But the worrying thing is, of course, is that who is he now trying to cozy up to? Well, he is now trying to cozy up to Trump. And just like another certain, well, European dictator, of course, in Russia, obviously very, very much hoping that, that Trump gets in. Because some of these conversations, or at least what Orban has said about this meeting that happened, I think casts a very, very clear picture of what a second Trump presidency would look like. A very, very attempt to try and cast himself as a strong man, admiring people like Orban and, of course, Putin in Russia. It sets a very, very bad, worrying look at what a second Trump presidency looks like. And as I've said before, you know, I've seen the polls, I've seen stuff. I worry that it's going to be very close. I worry that it's going to be very close. And like I say, fingers crossed until then. And I've always said it, but November is a long time to hold your breath, a very long time on that front. But we're going to go over this meeting because once again, Orban has sort of leaked what has happened, or at least what Trump has talked about in this meeting. And to no one's surprise, it involves Ukraine because Trump apparently said to Orban, he ain't going to give Ukraine a single penny. So, as one of the things we had been fearing, that if Trump did get in to the White House, he would completely cut funding to Ukraine and try to sort of force them into to the negotiating table. That looks like what his I can end this war in 24 hours plan looks like, to essentially end all aid and basically sort of force them to a negotiating table with Russia, to which Russia will say, we want you complete absolute capitulation. We've seen very recently the New York Times released what Russia's initial bargaining position was, which is what we expected, a completely, absolutely demilitarized Ukraine. Ukraine went into this war with 300,000 troops, both active and non-active sort of personnel at that time. Russia wants to cut that down to like 84,000, something like that. It's a very small number for the sheer amount of territory that they'd have to cover. It is just simply not enough. And the whole purpose of that is to purposely neuter a Ukraine so that they can just come back whenever they want and just, take more land. Which is, we've always said, is what the Ukrainians have been constantly worrying about. Can we get something that protects us in the future? This is why they are desperate to sort of join NATO. And I think, regardless of this outcome, we should look at something that we can do that will help Ukraine in the future, whether it is something like full NATO membership, like an associate membership, or we go, okay, if you attack Ukraine in such a way as you have done in the future, you're going to have to deal with all of us as well. But the other thing is very, very clear, as we talked about just recently as well, we have to have our own strategic autonomy from America and be able to operate as Europe, and have a European sort of NATO focus and look at, America's there, but we need to sort of, operate in our own way and look at how we operate. So things like Ursula von der Leyen pushing forward the European Security Council idea. I think that's a relatively good idea. And it is something that all European countries should be involved in. Because again, it's the defense of Europe. So, you know, probably something we should be, quite concerned about there. But anyway, let's have a look into these comments that Orban has apparently said about this. But this will obviously be causing a lot of trouble, and of course, especially for Ukraine as well. So before we do go getting into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, the one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, and of course, as always, a YouTube thank you button. And you can click on the like and the share button as well. So let's go over on into this. So this comes from the BBC. Trump will not give a penny to Ukraine. Hungary Orban MP says. To MP, PM says. So Donald Trump will not fund Ukraine's fight against the Russian invasion if he's elected the US president again, Hungarian PM Viktor Orban has said. He said he will not give a penny to the Ukraine-Russia war. That is why the war will end, the Conservative Prime Minister said after meeting Trump in Florida. So this is his whole idea that without the US funding and all this stuff, yeah, it will hurt Ukraine. We are seeing that now, where they are desperately trying to get that funding done. And this, once again, raises the alarm for if Trump does get in, if he does try and do this, then Europe is majorly going to have to step up to support Ukraine, majorly on this front. So it continues. So the former US president has pledged to, quote, end the war within 24 hours if elected, but has provided no details. Well, I think we've finally got one of the details. He's just going to completely try and cut funding. Whether, of course, Congress will allow him to do that. We've seen before them sort of go around it and try and cut him out. But obviously, if Trump is in the White House again, he's going to sort of try and do everything he can to stop that funding and try and attempt to force Ukraine to a very unfavorable, I would say, negotiated peace for them. So Mr. Orban is now publicly backing his long-term ally in the 2024 White House race, saying it is obvious that Ukraine cannot stand on its own feet. Mr. Orban told Hungary's TV channel late on Sunday, if Americans don't give money and weapons along with the Europeans, then the war is over. And if the Americans don't give money, the Europeans alone are unable to finance this war, and then the war is over. So again, what does this mean? It essentially means letting Russia win. That is what Orban is saying here. This is it. If America doesn't fund it, that is a big shock to Ukraine. It will cause a lot of problems that we're seeing now. But if that does happen, then we need to come together as Europeans and go, okay, we need to massively step up and sort of replace that for the Ukrainians and make sure that Putin does not just win this war. Because while we can help Ukraine at the moment, and we are helping them massively upping our own shell production here to help cover the gap and getting equipment and stuff over, there is still more that we can be doing. So yeah, it's very worrying, the fact that now this Orban has come out of this, and well, at least we now know what Trump will do to end this war in 24 hours. He also added that Mr. Trump is, quote, had a pretty detailed plan on how to end the Russia-Ukraine war, but he did not elaborate. The BBC has now asked the Trump campaign for a comment. And this is, again, what we can see. Pretty detailed plans. We don't know what those are. I think it basically is trying to end all aid to Ukraine. That they will basically say, we're not going to aid Ukraine, and then they will try and force Europe into also stopping to fund this. And again, it will force Ukraine into a very, very bad peace, and one that will not make a lasting peace, because we've seen, of course, the recent peace proposal that Russia had, which is the entire neutering of Ukraine. And we know now that Putin has even said now publicly he will not accept anything unless it is a total and absolute unconditional surrender from Ukraine, meaning that Putin can just come in and do whatever he wants to Ukraine, which is even more, I think, worrying for the Ukrainians. So it continues. So as Mr. Trump would have to sign off on spending bills that would come from Congress, he has in the past expressed skepticism that the US should go on to fund Ukraine defense. After the meeting on Friday in Mr. Trump's Mar-a-Lago mansion, the former US president praised his guest, saying that there is nobody that is better, smarter, or better leader than Viktor Orban. He is fantastic, he said. During his visit to the US, Mr. Orban did not meet with the current US president, Joe Biden, who is expected to be Mr. Trump's main rival. Well, he is going to be the rival. It's not expected. He is going to be the presidential elections in November. It is highly unusual for a visiting foreign leader to schedule talks with a former counterpart without calling on the current leadership. And of course, it's to try and big up Trump, to try and get him in the winning chair, shall we say. The Hungarian Prime Minister has repeatedly drawn strong criticism from his fellow EU leaders for maintaining close ties with the Russian President Vladimir Putin ever since he launched the full-scale war and invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. Unlike many other Western nations, Mr. Orban has refused to send weapons to its neighbor Ukraine, stating repeatedly that Kiev is unable to win against a nuclear-armed Russia. It's not that they are able to win, it's they are able to make this war unwinnable for Russia. Just the sheer amount of body count that Russia took trying to take Avdiivka of something in the region of like 17,000 troops just to take a single town is absolutely insane. They cannot keep up this level of losses. And that is because we are arming them. We are arming them on that front with the Ukrainians, and they are able to do what they can to push back against the Russians to make sure that they take these such losses that they cannot sustain. We know that Russia in itself, and Medvedev has come out and said we cannot fight beyond 2025. This is why we are probably seeing, especially this year and right now, such a push by the Russians to try and do something, especially now while the Ukrainians are suffering from the ammo shortage caused by the lack of the US funding. Remember, it's 3 months, well, 4 months now at this point since that spending is being gone, and they are having such problems with this and things like HIMARS missiles. They don't have that supply anymore. So because of that, Russia is now able to once again regroup its artillery units. That is causing a big problem for the Ukrainians as well. You know, it's just maddening to think that this guy is so close, and I wouldn't be surprised if during the presidential race, Ukraine becomes somewhat of an issue. We've seen that the US citizens are looking at foreign policy more than ever. So maybe this is something that could come up quite a lot in the November race, and even in the run up to the November race. So back to it. So EU leaders are increasingly concerned that a second Trump presidency would also see a significant reduction in the US military and financial aid to Ukraine and also the NATO military alliance. A $95 billion foreign aid bill, including a $60 billion in military assistance to Ukraine, has so far been stalled in Congress because of Republican opposition. The Republicans, who have openly encouraged by Trump, said that they will not allow a bill to clear the final hurdle in the House of Representatives without first agreeing to additional funding for the US border security. At a rally last month, he told supporters that the cash should be loaned rather than given without strings. He said they want to give them $60 billion more. Do it in this way: loan them the money, and if they can't make it back, and if they can make it, they'll pay us back. Russian forces have also recently made gains in eastern Ukraine as Kiev experiences acute shortage of ammunition. Ukraine is critically dependent on weapons from the US, its main supplier, and other Western allies to keep fighting Russia, a much bigger military force with abundance of artillery ammunition. One of the reasons why HIMARS are so effective against a lot of stuff as well. So really worrying, honestly, as we said, as we keep on pointing out that if this goes on, if there is a second Trump presidency, very worrying. Also, the fact, once again, the Republicans unnecessarily holding this up. You know, the Democrats are trying to sort of find other ways to get this funding through, even trying to sort of force a vote on the floor itself, because there are even Republicans who are going, no, this is ridiculous. We need to get this through. But it's the MAGA Republicans who are just insistent, saying, oh, no, we need money for a border wall. Well, that money has been offered before, but they've refused it. And it's because they do not want to let the Ukraine funding through, regardless. So it doesn't even matter. They've been offered that money and they haven't voted on it. They've refused it time and time and time again. So we'll see what happens. But the longer this goes on, the more this is delayed, the worse it becomes for the Ukrainians, the more it becomes an alert point for the Europeans. We are stepping up ammunition production. We've seen more investment in sort of, you know, that area. But it is a very significant point that if obviously Trump does win, then Europe will need very, very much to step up in this regard, even more so than we are sort of currently doing. But again, once again, one of the many worries and trouble spots that Trump could cause in this regard if he should win another election. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.